We're going to use archaeology. We're also going to use information given to us by Pueblo communities. And together, I really hope that we can form an idea of what life looked like down here. It's a really grand site, isn't it? Yes. Imagine how grand it would have looked, though, 1,000 years ago. So again, we know that this was built in the 11 and 1200s, so 800 to 1,000 years ago. Imagine whenever all the walls were complete, the rooms would have had flat roofs on top of them. You wouldn't have actually seen a lot of the blocks because it would have been slicked over in exterior stucco coats. In fact, you see the tower that goes all the way up to the top of the alcove? You can still see the stucco coats on the exterior of that wall. That is all perfectly intact. Most of this here is intact and preserved, but it would have looked even more grand. You know, in order to understand Cliff Palace, we have to go back in time a little bit. Is everyone here aware that Pueblo people were only living here in these cliff alcoves for about 100 years? Yeah. There's a much larger history. And that history goes back quite a ways. Can you guys hear me down there all right? All right, good. You know, that history goes back quite a ways. We have evidence that people were on this landscape thousands of years ago. And at first, people are moving around the landscape, hunting and gathering, but we see a big shift in the 5 and 600s. In the 5 and 600s, people stop moving around nomadically as much, and they begin living here permanently. There's actually a new technology that comes up through the trade routes from current-day Central America. And that new technology allows people to be here permanently. Do you know what that technology is?
Agriculture?
It's agriculture, it's farming. And what are the Pueblo people farming? You guys know this? Corn, squash, beans, wild potatoes we found evidence of a few years ago. The archaeology here continues. And amaranth, and of course you're still gathering things off the natural landscape. The pine tree gives you pine nuts. The juniper has the berries. The prickly pear gives you a fruit. So they're still definitely gathering things off the landscape, and that's really important. But when it comes down to it, corn is the staple crop that allows populations to boom. And over the next 500 years, from the 5 and 600s through the 1000s, we see that the mesa top begins to change. We believe that there are anywhere between 3,000 and 5,000 people living on the Mesa Verde by the 1000s. Let's say 5,000. I like going with the higher numbers. I think they're more fun. And easily, there could have been 5,000 people based on the number of ancestral sites up on the mesa top. You know, when I'm working at the visitor center, one of the main questions I get is, why were people living all the way up here? You know, you guys drove that winding park road, right? It seems like we're really far out here. But the answer I like to give people is, well, people were living here because people were living everywhere else. Did you guys pass through Cortez or Mancos to get here? You know, the valley to the north of us? Yeah. This Four Corners region, at the same time period, the 1000s, it probably held about 40,000 people. Which means this corner of Colorado had a higher population 800 years ago than today. This was a booming landscape, and it was because of agriculture, and it was because of corn. Up on the mesa top, though, that's where they're growing. Does it scream corn country to you? It doesn't seem, I'm glad you said yes, because it does, it is a really great place to grow corn. Now, the Pueblo people, they're not farming the giant sweet corn we have today. Like today we go to the grocery store and there's one type of corn, right? If you go to the Hopi Mesas in Arizona, drier plateaus than here, Pueblo people are still dryland farming corn. And they don't have just one variety of corn, they have dozens of varieties of corn. And those varieties of corn are much more well adapted to these dry plateaus. So farming here really takes off. And we start to see bigger stone structures popping up on the mesa top. We see another switch though in the 1100s. That's when people begin leaving the mesa top to live down here in the cliffs.